I want to welcome in Barry Tramel of the Oklahoman, who has been following closely everything going on with the Big 12 out in Oklahoma. Barry, I appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Glad to do it.
Now, I know you were off on vacation a week ago, but I'm assuming you've been able to catch up with where we currently stand and all the latest happenings within the Big 12. Where do things currently stand, and where do you see this going in terms of a resolution and time frame?
Well, I mean, I think the Big 12 is vetting schools to some degree, but on the same hand, I also think they're in constant talks with the television networks. I think it's become pretty clear that this expansion decision isn't so much about expansion as it is just reaping television money and playing maybe even chicken with the networks. So, I think more important than the recruitment of schools or the campaigns of schools, I think, is the talks between the Big 12 and ESPN and Fox, and see exactly what this is going to lead to. Are they the Big 12 going to play hardball and make these networks pay a lot of money for schools they don't really want, or will the networks stick in the mud and say, hey, sue us if you want to, but we're not paying you? So it's become quite the soap opera.
Now, do you see, it kind of makes it a little more complicated in terms of conference leaders need to get consensus within the conference, and then do you also potentially see the TV networks also are going to have to sign off on whoever they do decide to add?
Well, I think the network, if they got to the point where the Big 12, if the Big 12 and the networks could come to some kind of consensus, I think the networks would definitely have a say at the table about who to add. It's clear that back in 2011 that the Big 12 added West Virginia at the behest of the networks. That was the television decision. Mm-hmm. And I think you'd see much the same thing, maybe not just a flat-out decision, but lots of input. So if they could come to some sort of agreement on how many to expand to, what they'll pay, those kinds of things, I think you would see Fox and ESPN with definite advisory role, if nothing else.
Now, do you see that potentially changing possibly the course of what direction the conference was going to go in, maybe to a couple schools that maybe have more of a national brand, national following, national recognition?
I think yes. I think the Big 12's got a pretty good sense of that. The kinds of things you're talking about is if the Big 12 was to form some kind of digital network, some kind of conference network, the top two schools in that regard are clearly Brigham Young and Connecticut. Yeah. They would bring in the most eyeballs, I think, the most potential revenue, as opposed to Houston, Cincinnati, whoever else. Mm-hmm. There's things to like about Connecticut. It's so dang far from everybody, but there's things to like about them. It's the biggest university. It's the biggest state in the union without its flagship university in a Power 5 conference. Yep. It's got all those TVs, all those eyeballs, a populous state. It's got the ESPN connection. It can be out there with West Virginia. And maybe the most appealing thing is that outside of geography, the university fits the Big 12 model. What the Big 12 would ideally have is a conference full of state universities that are the flagship school in their state. So, Connecticut's got some things going for it. So I think UConn is definitely in the running for this. Now, it's possible that, the Big 12 doesn't even expand, stays at 10 just through negotiation. But if they do expand, I think clearly to me the top four candidates are Brigham Young, Houston, Cincinnati, and Connecticut.
I'm talking with Barry Tramel of the Oklahoman. Now, in the last couple of days up here in Connecticut, it was reported that the Big 12 has reached out to UConn to gauge their interest And also being reported is the school is actually willing to give up a conference game or two to actually play at MetLife Stadium just outside New York. So that could give some of the bigger schools within the Big 12 some airtime in New York, definitely more exposure potentially. Do you think that's something Texas and Oklahoma would look at as a benefit, despite the geographical distance?
Yes, that would be, and I assume it's the same for Texas, but I can tell you that would be something that would be interesting to Oklahoma. The Sooners have a history of, they sort of like doing home and homes with schools that may not be, in the Power 5 realm, especially if it becomes like an NFL situation, playing in an NFL stadium. They went to Cincinnati in 2010. Cincinnati came here to Oklahoma in 08. Sooners went to Cincinnati in 2010, and they played not at Nippert, but they played at Paul Brown Stadium. Mm-hmm. So those kinds of deals are pretty attractive to Oklahoma. Playing in, I've been to stores, but I can't remember the exact geography. But playing in Boston, playing in Foxborough, or in the Meadowlands, either one would be, I think, appealing to Oklahoma or Texas.
Have you had any direct conversations with maybe David Boren and talked specifically about UConn, or do you know what the thinking is of the Oklahoma leadership of the University of Connecticut?
Not with Boren. I talked with Boren about schools, and truthfully, he's not all that up on, or doesn't even want to be up on individual schools or particular schools. He's not eat up with who. He's more focused on the what and the how many. So, but I have talked to other OU, Joe Castiglione and some other Oklahoma and Oklahoma State administrators. And Connecticut, like I said, they've got all kinds of positives. They've got some negatives too. And the geography is a problem. West Virginia's geography is a problem. So, Connecticut's football prowess is a problem. The Huskies are on the upswing. Made the Fiesta Bowl in 2010 under Randy Edsall. Since then, it's gone splat, and that's a concern. They don't want another Kansas. They don't want another basketball school that really can't compete in football and that nobody cares about. So, I think that's a major concern. That would probably be a bigger concern than the geography, to be honest with you. If Connecticut football was where it was 6 years ago, I think the Huskies would have a lot stronger case.
Oh, okay. In recent days, it's come out that FedEx has been potentially going to financially back a possible Memphis edition. They're definitely going to be part of the pitch. In terms of this being all about money, do you see that Memphis could potentially buy their way in with the support of FedEx?
If they did, it's a total sign that the Big 12 is on the short-term lease. It's possible that could happen, but if it is, it's because several schools are headed out the door in a few years. I can promise you that. Oklahoma does not want to be in a conference with Memphis. I can say for sure. It's not the profile of the league. It's not the academic standing of the conference members. Heck, it's not the football. Memphis doesn't have hardly anything going for it. They've got no fan base. They've got no football tradition. They've been good in football for 2 years, and the quarterback and the coach who made that possible, one's in the NFL and one's in Blacksburg. So, there's nothing to get excited about Memphis. They don't even have their own stadium. It's not who you want in your conference. If they do get in, it's because somebody wrote a check and somebody said, we're going to go out of business anyway. Let's just take as much money as we can get now.
And then final question for Barry Tramel of the Oklahoman, who's nice enough to join us to talk potential Big 12 expansion. There's been a lot of talk in terms of timeline and closing this up before the start of the 2016 college football season. Do you see this being closed out in a matter of weeks, or do you think because the TV networks got involved, this may carry on a little longer than what has been reported?
I think it could carry on longer. I still think they could, they could go into October and still get everybody lined up for 2017. If you have to do something, you do it. So, in what year was it? In 2011, when they added TCU in West Virginia, TCU wasn't added until October. So West Virginia, I think, was the first week in November, and they still got in the next football season. So, you can get things done, but I do think the process is slowed by all the network talk. It's it is a case of the Big 12 can't just go as full blast as it portrayed itself going, and maybe that was by design. Maybe they knew this was going to happen, and they just wanted to, set some dynamite sticks. So I can't see any way something would be settled by September 1st. But I do think that it's possible that they could still get things done in time for the 2017 season.
I guess, and then one final question. Based on everything that you have heard, what do you think the future Big 12 will look like? Do you think we're going to be staying at 10? Do you think there's going to be 2? Do you think there's going to be 4? And who, if they do expand, do you see as being the final additions, based on all the information that you've gathered to this point?
Well, I think they're going to expand, and I think it's a total money grab. I think they're expanding, knowing that the league is not going to be with us long, or at least that some people won't be. I don't think Oklahoma and Texas, and probably Oklahoma State, I don't know who else, Kansas or maybe Tech, I don't know. I don't think they're going to be in the league in 2025. I think Oklahoma, or at least Oklahoma, has reached the point where it says this just isn't working, and we're gonna pursue other options. And I think that's in many ways what has led to this money grab for expansion.
And who do you potentially see, since you do think it's going to expand? Who do you see as the additions?
I would say that Brigham Young, Houston, Cincinnati, and Connecticut, as I said, I think those are the top 4. If they go with 2, I think it would most likely Brigham Young and Cincinnati. There's still some political opposition to Houston,
yep,
despite what people say. And I think that just the geography and the football keeps Connecticut in the second tier. But I think there's a decent chance they'll go 4. So if you're going to grab money, grab all you can get.
All right, thanks, Barry, for taking the time to join us. And maybe before we go, let the listeners know exactly where they can find you online.
Newsok.com is where the Oklahomans, that's the Oklahomans website. We've got all kinds of Big 12 stuff on there.
All right, thanks, Barry. I'm sure we'll touch base down the line should anything break.
Good luck to that.